Hello and welcome to the CoffeeMTG channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 blue cards coming out in Phyrexia All Will be 1. Straight into it then, I think we start off Encroaching Mycosynth. It's a 3 colorless 1 blue. Artifact rare, non-land permanents you control are artifacts in addition to their other types. The same is true for permanent spells you control and non-land permanent cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Now this is obviously a rather situational card, though I find it's probably going to synergize quite well in a mono blue deck that will use the card that we're going to talk about a bit later called Unctus Grand Metatect. And also for those of you that have been, like me, wanting to find a use for Khan Living Legacy, I think there's an opportunity to build a deck which is going to, rather than be aggro, give us some board state control in a sort of a mid to late tempo deck build, and basically take out the opponent through perfect hand sculpting, board control, and then once you get the state of the board that you're looking for and you get the permanents you need with the Encroaching Mycosynth out, you'll probably be able to trigger for a win condition either obviously an outright attack, or you'll be able to trigger Khan the Living Legacy's -7 loyalty ability, where you get an emblem which states tap an untapped artifact you control. The emblem deals 1 damage to any target. There's a lot of ways that you can get draw capacity coming out of obviously blue and red. They'll give you some power stones, they're going to give you some treasures, you'll be able to ramp into your draw, your removal, your counter magic, and your accelerants that will really give you that utter mid-game dominance that I love coming out of blue control, typically in blue-white, but red has been edging there with the mana accelerant. It does make it a viable candidate, even though there's often a discard aspect to red draw, but that's palatable when you get the accelerant. So yeah, going back to the card, I think it's certainly a situational card, but it's in my view just giving a much needed power boost to those that are looking to play Khan Living Legacy in standard. So I'm going to play around with that card and see how it develops as a competitive deck or not. But I think it's probably actually rather deceptively powerful, just because the mana cost is frankly quite early. If this was even at 6 mana, no, probably not 7 mana, I'd say 6 mana would be the limit for me, but at 4 mana it just fits so seamlessly into a control deck. Whether you want to go control and burn for your removal, you transition into whites for your removal, it doesn't really matter. Even go black, you go blue-black if you want. It's so flexible given the mana cost is low. It's only 1 blue, and synergizing with Khan, it's a colorless planeswalker, so you really have complete flexibility to choose how you want to build the deck around those 2 cards. Obviously blue will be one of those colors, but I think this is very, very flexible and it gives a lot of scope for deck building and experimentation. So I highly encourage people to, if you start getting packs with the Mycosynth and you've already got a couple of copies of Khan, play around and see how you can build something, because I think there's something there. I just haven't exactly found the right deck build yet that I'm going to play test. Okay, on to the next card, and I've been particularly looking forward to these coming out of the meta. That is, sorry, not out of the meta, out of the set. That is Blade of Shared Souls. It's a 2 colorless 1 blue artifact equipment. I've really missed the swords from back in the Mirrodin days, so this really gives me that feeling of playing sort of 10 or 12 years ago. They've introduced a new ability for Mirrodin, which is also, in my opinion, something that has drastically been needed to elevate the competitive potential of equipment decks, which is when this equipment enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 red rebel creature token, then attach this to it. The main pain point for me with any equipment deck was not that it was slow per se, it was that it was by default a turn behind. If this didn't have 4 Mirrodin, it would be a 3-drop artifact equipment that, let's presume on turn 3 you felt the need to play. it does nothing for you on that third turn. It's not a creature, it's not a blocker, it's not removal, it's not life gain, it's not card draw, it's not anything. It's just a card that you'll then have to pay more mana the next turn to equip. And now let's read what the ability is. Whenever Blade of Shed Souls becomes attached to target creature, for as long as Blade of Shed Souls remains attached to it, you may have that creature become a copy of another target creature you control. It's a fantastic ability, but again, if you were playing this on turn 3 with the intent to attach it on turn 4 in the absence of that 4 Mirrodin ability, you are really, in my view, probably getting almost no value, because you wouldn't have anything that valuable on the board. So the fact that 4 Mirrodin is a feature of this card and of the other equipments that are in this set is a huge boost to their playability, and giving them an increased range of power level over the early game and mid and late game, and obviously returning to the ability that you can have the creature become a copy of another target creature you control. I think that's just fantastic. It won't it won't trigger ETB effects, but the static abilities are, in my view, going to be so it's not static. The passive abilities are going to be what we're using this for. Again, I'd like to see this applied to something such as the tokens that would come off of, again, Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim, -1 or -2 to get a token that's an XX according to how many cards are in your hand. Just in general, or even Kikijiki. Kikijiki, Mirror Breaker, could be targeting a creature card, giving you multiple copies of something that once you get a few copies on the board, you're getting a lot of synergy out of. Basically, I see this as being a 3 or even a 4 of in a blue-red aggro deck, possibly. I don't see it fitting too much into other decks, because most of what I want to copy is going to be legendary, but let's see how the meta develops. It's definitely a great card, and I will playtest this one as well. It's much better in my view than some of the older equipments, which were very cool in and of their own right. They were slower. Moving on, we have Blue Sun's Twilight. It is X mana and 2 blue sorcery. It is gain control of target creature with mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, create a token that's a copy of that creature. This is really valuable because it's going to give you the ability to remove a threat from your opponent's side of the board, whether it's the early game or the late game. And more impressively, if 5 or more, you're taking a big creature from your opponent's side of the board, you're creating a copy of that creature as well, and you can technically target a creature that is on your side of the board as well. So if you have something in particular that you really would like a duplicate of, you have that utility. So absolutely, I'd say Blue Sun's Twilight is probably a 1 or a 2 of in any deck that's looking to service this type of utility. Definitely, obviously, in blue control. I don't see it being a 4 of, because it doesn't give enough survivability to justify that, and being in blue, you're going to be drawing into it anyway. But I think 1 or 2 of is probably good utility for the deck. So great card as well. And also, I love the artwork on this. I did actually think it was sort of an orb that it was holding, but I watched another video. It appears to be the sun that it appears to be holding, so it's pretty cool. Moving on to the Ichormoon Gauntlet. It's a 2 colorless and 1 blue mana to cast artifact. This card, I don't know what to frankly say. This feels very much reminiscent of the Mondrak Glory Dominus, in the sense that this is one powerful card. It's effectively, let's ignore the first ability, just talk about the second ability. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose a counter on target permanent. Put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. It's obvious. If you've got indestructible counters, you've got loyalty counters, +1/+1 counters, vigilance, lifelink, any other type of counter, you get to put an additional one on. That's substantial in its own right for 3. It's an artifact, so it's more difficult to hit by removal. It's low enough in mana cost that it's viable in virtually any speed deck, but then notwithstanding that, you have the first ability where it says Planeswalkers you control have Proliferate for 0, and -12 take an extra turn after this one. Now I'm going to try very hard to figure out how to build Proliferate triggers, because if you're taking an extra turn, conceivably you don't need to find too many ways to abuse this cape or this ability. You just need to find a way to get 6 or 7 Proliferate counters on, you know, a given Planeswalker, and you'll be able to access that extra turn. Yeah, there has to be a way to break this card. I'm going to try very, very hard to do that. But anyway, I mean, you know, just for the second ability alone, I think that's some very cool value. If that was all that was printed on the card, I would say it's a 2-of or a 3-of in a deck. The fact now that it offers the ability for Planeswalkers to give 0 Proliferate and the ability to take an extra turn off this one, I know there is going to be a way to combo this thing, and I have to find it, and when I do, I'll know if this is going to be a 2-of in a deck, a 3-of in a deck, or a 4-of in a deck. I'm usually very conservative about saying 4-ofs in blue, because if you're playing blue, it means you're going slow, long, and late with a lot of draw. So it's very hard to justify 4-ofs in blue decks. Even for a card like, I still think it will be at the 2 card limit. But yeah, great card, and very excited to see if this can be broken. Okay, moving on to the 5th card. It is the, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Unctus or Unctus Grand Metatect. 1 colorless and 2 blue, legendary artifact creature Phyrexia Vidalcan. That's a mouthful. It's a 2/4. Other blue creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1, and pay either 2 life or 1 blue. Until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a blue artifact in addition to its other colors and types. Activate only as a sorcery. Now, as I've just finished speaking about the Ichormoon Gauntlet, saying that I'm too hesitant to put 4-ofs in decks, this card, the Grand Metatect, is probably a 3 or a 4-of. The reason I say that is I am thinking of putting this in a deck with the Encroaching Mycosynth and Karn Living Legacy, and finding a way to go cheap and aggro with some cards in the early game, building up the board state with whatever I can, tokens, creatures, I'm not sure. And once you bring down the Encroaching Mycosynth, we'll be able to basically throw creatures at our opponent and sculpt our hand for free. And with the Encroaching Mycosynth, all those creatures are going to get +1/+1, so they're actually going to be rather hardy threats. And when you're sculpting your hand that fast at, you know, realistically what appears to be a top end of the deck costing 4 between Encroaching Mycosynth and Karn Living Legacy, I think we're going to get some super control from the mid game that is almost unrivaled in standard, except for pure play blue-white, blue-white control, but even that is going to be focused more on removal. This is more about early game stability in place of removal. It's going to be creatures, and we're going to be heavily incentivized, obviously, to swing as often as we can to sculpt that hand. And when you do sculpt that hand, you're going to have mana free to cast the cards that you've drawn. So it's an interesting interpretation of a blue draw mechanic. It's obviously not conventional, where you'd go Planeswalker draw off loyalty, or you'd be hard casting spells to draw. This is rewarding aggression or tapping of creatures to draw a card. Obviously, if the draw and discard component of this indicates perhaps a flavor of blue-red, which obviously would fit very well with the sense of aggro. but then again it does say other blue creatures, so we want to stick within the blue color for our aggro. But there are certainly some good blue cards out there that are cheap to play and good aggressive cards early on. I never found a blue aggro, I mean I don't think anyone ever found a blue aggro deck to be game ending, but when you pair that off with Encroaching Mycosynth effectively powering up your board state with an Anthem ability from the Grand Metatect, which then also gives you the ability to draw, which could be, you know, let's say 2 or 4 or 5 cards, 6 cards. Yeah, sure, you'll have to discard cards, but who cares? You're going to get the hand that you need to win the game. I just think this is fantastic sort of flexibility, which blue rarely actually gets to see. And again, the fact that it is 3 mana doesn't worry me to play this card. It doesn't matter too much if it gets blown up, because you know it simply might be one of those scenarios where it's a 4 of in the deck. 4 of that, 4 of Encroaching no, you can't put 4 Encroaching Mycosynth in. Maybe 3 Mycosynth, 3 Grand Metatect, and probably 4 Khan, because Planeswalkers are always targeted. Anyway, it's a very good card, and I hope that people play with this, because the artwork is beautiful, the ability is strong, and it's giving a really fresh interpretation of what blue or how blue can be played. So I'm very much looking forward to this card. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are on your top 5 cards, what I've got right or wrong in here. Please give me any feedback on the video, and yeah, I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Bye bye now.